We are here today to talk about the adolescent brain and how the teen or preteen brain works. It does, I promise. We'll get into that. So today, for our presentation, I'm going to get us started talking a little bit about the brain and the things that are going on in your preteen or teen's brain. And then Megan Jarmus, our school psychologist from the high school, is going to be talking a little bit about how all of these things fit together and relate to school. And then wrapping it up will be Mary Jane Lauschen, one of our school counselors from the high school, and Ken Fritz, one of our teachers here, as well as our football coach, will be kind of talking about how to talk to your kids, how to listen to your kids, and giving you some tips for conversation starters and things. So, to get us started, I'm Sarah Walker. I'm the Director of Student Services for the district, but I'm coming to you today more as a mom of 3 teenagers. I have one teenager who is just starting his journey. He's my youngest. My middle is right in the middle of this adolescent journey. And my eldest, she's on the tail end. And so going through all of this, each of them has gone through this whole process, this whole adolescent thing a little bit differently. And it's really, really hard to keep up. So, for example, and some of you with teenagers at home might be able to relate to this, just last night, I got home late, it was a long day at work, and I walk in the house and the house is dark. Everyone's home, mind you, but the house is dark. All 3 of my kids scattered to different corners of the house. My eldest is down in her bedroom. She's in the dark, huddled under her blankets because she's taking a nap at 8 o'clock in the evening, but she's sitting there scrolling her TikTok and scrolling her social media while she's lying under her blankets. My middle guy comes downstairs, realizes that I'm home. He saw me pull into the driveway, realizes I'm home, comes downstairs. I started asking him about his day. I got some single-syllable grunts from him. Really, he just wanted more food from the kitchen. He disappears. And then come to think of it, I don't think I actually physically saw my youngest at all last night because he was in the basement playing Xbox with his friends. We shouted to each other once or twice. Hello, good night, how's your day? Fine, okay, great. But that was it. You know, so they've got all these things going on that when I started looking into this and started researching for this process, or this presentation, this is what I thought when I started looking at what's really going on in the teen brain. What I learned was very different. We've got some myths about teenagers. How many times have we heard, it's just hormones that's making them act so crazy? And that's what I've always thought. That's what I was grown up believing. That's what I was told when I was younger. But actually, it's not the hormones as much as it is the development going on in their brain. There are so many things happening and so many connections happening in an adolescent's brain that it's just really hard for them to manage it all. And then the other thing was about being just immature. Yes, they're testing boundaries. Yes, they're pushing your buttons. Yes, they're trying to see how far they can go. But they're also being very impulsive and quick with their decision making. So this is all a learning process for them. And then finally, the rebellion is just their way to express their independence. Our goal, and I've been guilty of this too, is how many times I'm telling you to do this just because I'm trying to make you more independent. That's our goal. We want our kids to be independent. What we really want our kids to be is interdependent. We want them to know that it's healthy to ask for help. It's healthy to rely on others. And so what they need to learn is not that push away, it's that love them through it, because even through that rebellion, they're just trying to express who they are and try to figure that out. Okay, that's great. You're like, Walker, you told me the myth, you told me why they aren't true. What is really true then? So now we have a nice, pretty picture of the brain. And the adolescent period actually goes from age 12 to 24. Like, that's a long time. And thinking that my eldest was almost through it, I was kind of wrong, because she's got a ways to go. But brain development goes from back to front. The last to develop is this prefrontal cortex up here. And the first to develop is your amygdala, which is that teeny tiny little thing. It's part of the limbic system, and I can't get into the neuroscience of it all because I don't know that. But what I do know is the amygdala is the place that controls those immediate responses. It controls your instincts. It controls your emotions. What the prefrontal cortex does is control that decision making. And so that being what develops last makes it a lot harder to kind of process through those decisions, to plan forward, to consider the consequences of their actions. So an example, when my oldest was in her younger teen and preteen years, she had very big emotions. Don't tell her I'm telling you all this. She had very big emotions, and she had a lot to say. And she would say it very loudly and very expressively. And I would start helping her. Because I'm mom, so let's talk through this, let's ask questions, and that would just make the emotions bigger and louder and grander, and now she's mad. And so we actually had to get to a point where she'd start going, and I would say, okay, is this one of those times where you need me to just listen? Or do you want me to actually say something? And so then we got to a point too where she would just say, it's listening time, and then she'd start going. But now that she's getting more into this, considering the consequences, problem solving, understanding kind of how the decision making is happening, those emotions have calmed down, and we're starting to think a little bit more rationally. So that's what's happening when you're moving from that processing from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. So what does that mean? That means we've got teenagers who are most likely to act impulsive, read and misinterpret social cues, have all kinds of accidents, and, I'm not going to read you the whole list, but just thinking before they act, thinking about the perspective of others. And they're more likely to engage in risky behavior. That does not mean that they don't know what's right from wrong. That does not mean that they can't make good decisions. And it does mean that they should be held accountable for their actions. So just because we know they have all these things going on, our job as parents is to kind of love them through that and to make sure that we're pausing before we react emotionally, and we're kind of helping them, guide them through these impulses and decisions that they're having. So we can encourage those risks. This is a great time to try new things. We can talk through decisions and possible outcomes. We can stay connected. And one of the big things is making sure they're taking time to detach, to wind down, get good sleep. Because when you're tired, you're edgy. And that doesn't help when you're already having these big emotions and things. So I'm going to show you a video here that kind of gives a quick overview of what's going on in a teen brain as they're moving through this adolescent period.
The adolescent period is absolutely amazing. People often give it a negative approach, saying, oh, it's a time where adolescents are going to lose their mind, or they're just immature, or raging hormones drive them crazy. These are all not only wrong, but they're myths that mislead us and actually disempower us. Whether we're adults or adolescents, they actually give us the wrong message, and they make it so there's nothing we can do. So what is actually the truth? The truth is that instead of raging hormones, what's happening is we have remodeling in the brain. In ways we never could have predicted, we now understand two big things are happening in the brain. Things you, as an adult, can support adolescents in developing well, and if you're an adolescent, you actually can use this to help your brain grow in an optimal way. What are those two things? The brain is pruning itself. So imagine that in childhood, you're growing like a tree and establishing all these branches and all these leaves are growing. In the brain, that means connections among the basic cell, the neuron, called synapses are being established, and you're soaking in the knowledge of the world, and that's beautiful. The tree is just growing, growing, growing. But then what happens, that surprised everyone, is the brain begins to prune itself. You start carving away some of those leaves, some of the smaller branches, even some of the larger branches. And the reason for the pruning is to specialize the brain. While the child is developing in ways that are really generalized, learning everything they can about everything they can, an adolescent is going to begin to find their passion, to actually find things they like, things they really love doing, and to drive their development in that way. So pruning is actually a use it or lose it principle underneath it. That if you don't use something, you're going to lose it. So if you like sports or like dancing or like music, do those things so you continue to establish those circuits. The second thing that happens in the remodeling adolescent brain is myelin formation. Myelin is a healthy sheath that allows connected neurons to communicate with each other in a much more effective way. How? It's 100 times faster, the signal that's sent down a neuron to communicate with another neuron, 100 times faster, and after it fires off, it's 30 times shorter the resting period that happens. 30 times 100 is 3,000. So when you put down myelin, you've made your neurons communicate 3,000 times more effective. Thing. Now the great thing too is that you as an adolescent can actually use the focus of your attention to be aware of your emotions, aware of other people, to be engaging in activities, to be doing things with your thoughts that actually reinforce the parts of your brain you want to hold on to. So the good news about the remodeling story is that a field called neuroplasticity, how the brain responds to experience, shows us that what you do with your mind can change the activity and therefore the structure of your brain. So if you then come up with the statement that the ultimate goal of brain remodeling is to make an integrated brain, to differentiate areas, that's the pruning, and myelinate them, that's the linkage. When you increase differentiation and linkage, you make the brain more integrated. And an integrated brain is the pathway toward well-being. And you can do mind-sight exercises. These are exercises that increase insight, empathy, and integration. And if you do them as an adolescent, and you can also do them as an adult, you'll actually increase the integration of your brain as your brain is growing, not just during adolescence, but throughout the lifespan. And what's the outcome of integration? When integration is made visible, it's kindness and compassion. And so what we see through adolescent development is that our relationships become built on connections that are deep and filled with honoring each other's vulnerability, that's kindness, and supporting connections that are compassionate, filled with a sense of caring about other people and wanting to help them. This is the kind of world we can build as we move through life and support each other in our development.
I love that video so much. So as we're helping our kids move through these teen and preteen years, remember, just say, I can see you're busy integrating your brain. So maybe you want to take a few minutes and think about that, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it later. But talking about it now is going to be Miss Megan Jarmus. She's going to talk about what does this all mean for school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, so how does this relate to school? There are three major areas that we see the brain functioning with through our adolescence in the school day. They're social, emotional, problem solving, and executive functioning skills. So we'll break those down a little bit. So our social emotional skills, this is our ability to regulate our thoughts, emotions, our behaviors. Why is this relevant now? You're probably saying to yourself, I've been dealing with this since my kid was a toddler. I've been teaching them how to regulate emotions and navigate behaviors and all of this. Well, it's a little different now because adolescence is a time when children are starting to learn a little bit more about their personal and social identities. So they're taking the things that they've learned and they're now trying to transfer it or use it in a different way that suits their own identity or who they feel like they are. They're becoming more independent from parents while still remaining connected. We talked about that interdependence a little bit. So it's really important that, they figure out how to display these emotions or behaviors in a way that they feel like suits them best. Okay, so what should you expect, as you're seeing these things, as your adolescent grows? They may be more interested in spending time with their friends versus their family. They may have some more mood changes. Their brain is still learning to manage these emotions in grown-up or more mature ways. You may notice a little bit of self-consciousness or self-esteem issues because not only are they trying to figure out who they are, but they're also navigating who's around them, and they're noticing differences or changes and comparing themselves to other people. Don't be surprised if your child is a little bit withdrawn. These are really big things that they're dealing with. Emotions can be heavy, and it's okay to sit back and be by themselves and spend some time navigating those and processing some of those emotions that they're going through. You know, if we have sensory overload and we need a break from whatever we're dealing with, this is kind of like emotional overload. You know, they're trying to navigate these big things. So it's okay that they're being a little bit withdrawn. If they're too withdrawn, that might be a little bit of a different conversation, but it's okay when your child wants to spend a little bit of time by themselves. One thing you might notice, your child may start to challenge you a little bit more. You may see that arguments are happening more often. Your child is starting to think more abstractly, and they may challenge some of the different points of view that you have if it's something that is different from what they think. Like we talked about before, they're trying to find more independence, but they still need help navigating these certain situations. Sometimes that can create some headbutting. The good news is conflict tends to peak in early adolescence, so some of you, there may be a light at the end of the tunnel if they're reaching some of those older ages. We talked about the risky behavior, engaging in that a little bit more. They're exploring their limits and boundaries, pushing them a little bit if they can, and learning about risks and consequences. Again, we're not excusing them for anything, but sometimes our children do not think about the consequences before engaging in some of these behaviors, so we have to help teach some of those things. So how can we help? What can you do at home? Model positive relationships that you have with other family members, friends, colleagues, even your own kids, other kids that you may have, in the home. Get to know your child's friends and also get to know your child's friends' parents. That's really important to keep those connections going. Just because it's a good way to have another way to connect with somebody who's involved in your kid's life. Actively listen to your child's feeling and have discussions. We've talked a lot about how they're dealing with a lot of new things and approaching and processing things in different ways and having conversations and talking about things in ways that make sense to the child can be really effective. It's also important to talk openly about your own feelings. If we're asking our kids to be vulnerable with us and to let us in and to talk to us about what they're dealing with, it's okay that they expect that back, and I think that they should get it so that they understand that it's okay to have conversations like that. The last thing, patience and positivity. Adolescence is not easy, so those are two important words to remember. All right, so let's talk about some problem-solving skills. Now, this is a life skill that we learn over time. This is how we navigate conflict. This is how we achieve challenging goals. We make decisions. These skills help small situations not snowball into big situations. So if we learn how to problem solve and figure things out, we can manage smaller issues and, they don't have to turn into larger situations that we can avoid. So communication is key. As we're teaching these problem-solving skills, it's, just like Sarah was talking about with talking with her daughter, it's easy to see the big picture when you're talking things out. Sometimes kids just have to hear themselves talk. Sometimes they need us to help them navigate that conversation a little bit more, give them some pointers or key points to think about. And we can model our problem-solving skills as we go through them. If you're dealing with something at work or in your personal life, you can share that with your kid and how you navigate that and what you did to overcome that. Ask their opinion. Ask what they would do in that situation. You'd be surprised at how excited our kids get if we ask their opinion, even if we don't always take their advice, but just to keep them involved in some of the things that we have going on in our lives too. And don't just give the answers. If we hand them all of the answers, they're never going to figure these things out on their own. We can't hold their hand and solve these problems for them. We really have to give them the skills and the challenges to help get them through those problems so that they can learn as they continue on with any situation that they're faced with. All right, our executive executive functioning skills, these are the skills that we need to plan and accomplish our goals. So there are several different skills, adaptable thinking, which includes problem solving, adjusting to situations, understanding different perspectives, planning, how we think about the future, how we create our plans and prioritize, self-monitoring, how we evaluate ourselves and how well we're performing a certain task, self-control, managing our physical and emotional outbursts when we're faced with an obstacle, working memory, retaining information for future use, time management, creating a schedule, sticking to that schedule so that we can complete our tasks on time, and organization, how we arrange our materials effectively. And as educators, we typically think of these things as relating to school and classwork and homework and all of those things, but they can also be used in multiple different situations. Household chores is, one of the things that you're likely to see at home. So what can we do to help develop these skills? Now, for most students, these skills are just going to naturally evolve over time because they're observing us and they're seeing how we start and end things and how we organize. So they're going to pick up on some of the things that we're doing, but they may need some more support along the way. So what we can do to teach some of these skills at home, again, we keep talking about these modeling and demonstrating strategies. It works for all of these skills that we've been talking about, but you can model strategies that work for you. If you have a way that you organize stuff at work, or if you have a way that you like to complete tasks at home, you can sit down with your kid and explain why you like to do it that way and what works for you and how you figure that out. If you find yourself in a situation where you are sitting down with your kid, let's say you want them to start writing an essay. Well, instead of saying, I want you to take out your notebook or your Chromebook or paper, pencil, whatever they need to use, give them prompts rather than directions. The directions just tell them exactly what to do. But if we're prompting them, we're triggering their brain to help them figure out, okay, I need to do this and this and this. So instead of take out your notebook, you could say, well, what do you need for this task? Well, I need to get out my paper, pencil, whatever, Chromebook, scrap paper to do some planning and organizing, whatever they may need, but it gets their brain working rather than us always telling them what they need for certain situations. If you want them to do the dishes, instead of saying open the dishwasher and take out the clean dishes, you can say, well, what do you need to do to start this task? You're going to need, and have them say, I'm going to need to take out the dirty dishes, rinse, or take out the clean dishes, rinse the dirty dishes, put them in the dishwasher, whatever. Just the little prompts, it takes a small second, but it gets them thinking versus just feeling like they're having directions, given to them only. Ask your kid what works for them. What works for us may not work for our kids. If we explain in depth all of these scenarios or situations that we're in and explain what we do to get through them and how we organize and all that, they may look at us and say, yeah, that's not going to work for me. If they say something that they think would work and it sounds crazy or outlandish, just go with it. They know themselves better than we know them, and if they think that something might work, give it a try. If it does, that's awesome. If it doesn't, then you start over. We can't build these executive functioning skills if we're constantly doing things that work for somebody else and not for ourselves. So again, having that open communication is really important. All right. And Mary Jane is going to talk about how to talk to your kids.
Okay, now that we know the science behind the way the kids act, and we know the social emotional obstacles that they face, we still have to figure out how to talk to our kids. So how to talk to kids, so how to talk so kids will listen, and how to listen so kids will talk. The most important thing that you can remember is you have to listen. Most of us as adults, we talk way too much. I can confess to that, I talk way too much. But we have to learn that we just have to listen to our kids. They're giving us signals, they want to talk to us, they want to be your best friend. To be able to, not necessarily your best friend to go out and do things, but your best friend that they know they can count on you at all times. And one of the things that you want to do is give them your full attention. You want to build that relationship. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. But they need to know that they can come to you at any time and tell you anything that they need to tell you. So the most important thing is you listen. So if they're telling you this wild story that happened today or something that they did and someone got in trouble or they did something, you know, your first reaction might be, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. You have to make sure that you stop, let them finish what they're saying, and then calmly respond, like, that was interesting, or what happened next, or what do you think about that? We need to learn to listen, and we need to learn not to give advice unless they really ask for it. We also want to validate their feelings. As Megan talked about, kids get sad, they get disappointed, they might have broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and as parents, we don't want our kids to feel bad at all. We never want them to feel bad, so we're always in a rush to come in and fix it for them. But what you really need to do is to acknowledge their feelings. So if your child tells you that they studied for a test for a long time and they failed it, you know, your response might be, oh, don't worry, you'll do better next time, or that teacher didn't know, you know, really what to put on the test, or that teacher didn't give you the right information. You know, you want to acknowledge their feeling like something like, oh, I see that you're really disappointed because you did poorly on the test and you really studied hard. What can you do next time? What do you think your next step should be? Or if somebody's sad, you know, a friend's sad because maybe they didn't include him or her on the playground or out for recess. You could say, I understand you're sad. That must make you really feel bad. How do you think we can get over it? We as parents know the things that our teens are going through now are small compared to some of the things they'll go through as adults. And we want to help them learn how to get through these feelings. So if they're sad or they're disappointed for a little while, that's okay. So just so they know that they can come to you. You also want to show trust. Kids want their parents to know that they can be trusted. And then maybe if they can be trusted, they can get a few more privileges. So if you show trust in your kids, maybe you need help at home, you have to finish a project, and you ask your child to maybe watch his younger siblings, or you're running late and need your child to start dinner, that's showing trust in them. On the flip side, you can give them maybe a few more privileges, stay out a little bit later, take them to a movie, take them out to eat with their friends. And that kind of goes hand in hand where they learn to have that confidence in you. You show confidence in them, and you're again building relationships. Don't be a dictator. As parents, we can set whatever rules we want in our house. Some of us set more rules than others. But if your child asks you to do something and your answer right away is no, your teen is going to push back. That's just natural. They really want to do something, they're going to push back to get the answer that they want to get. But if you can take the time and maybe sometimes explain the reason for saying no and your reason behind your rule, it might be a little bit more helpful to the child. Like, for instance, your child says he has a project to do and he wants to sleep over his friend's house, and they're going to finish the project and then they're going to go to school together the next day. Well, you know they may finish the project. You don't know to what, how well it'll go, but you also know they're going to stay up pretty late, probably be on social media, and not be any good in school next day. So that's your reasoning for not letting them go, but you might come with a compromise. Maybe they can stay till 9 o'clock, or maybe they can start earlier and the friend can eat dinner at your house. So if you explain the reason for your rule, if it's appropriate, sometimes it's a little better for kids to understand. You also need to give praise. When we have little kids, kindergarten, first, second graders, we're always praising them. We're telling them how good they did on their papers. We're so happy that they made it to the bathroom on time. We really are excited that they brought the slip home to sign. But we don't do that so much for our teenagers. So and teenagers want praise. They want their parents to see that they are trying sometimes, and they do want to do good. So if you look and see the list and the number of times that you praise your child during a day, and the number of the times that you maybe give them a negative response or just kind of a blunt response, that column with the praises needs to be a lot higher. And along with praises goes hugs. We don't hug our teenagers enough. Sometimes you just maybe don't want to hug them because you're so mad at them, or they were disrespectful, but they need hugs. They need that affection. Maybe it's just sitting together and watching a movie, or putting your hand on their shoulder and telling them how proud you are of them. That affection goes a long way as well. The other thing you need to do is control your emotions. When your child maybe is being disrespectful or being rude or walks away while you're talking or slams the door, or mumbles a response and you're just boiling inside, the first thing you want to do is just kind of repeat that same type of behavior. You want to yell back or be rude or whatever. The best thing you can do is count to 10. You might only get to 5, but that's okay because you're calming down a little bit. And then you have some time to maybe answer in a more calm voice. Or if you can't do that, you say, you know what, I'm really upset. I'm going to give it some time. Give me half an hour, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk through this and see why you're acting this way or see what's really bothering you. Anytime you can do little things together, whether it's shopping, going for a walk, cleaning out a room, organizing a cupboard, I don't know, whatever it is that you can do together, that's really important. It makes the child feel important. Sharing regular meals. For some of us, that's the thing of the past because our schedules are so busy. A lot of people just go through the drive-thru and sometimes eat their meals in the car on the way to a sporting event or some sort of activity. But when you share regular meals, you have that opportunity to talk. You have that opportunity to share the information for the day. And it becomes, it becomes a thing that kids look forward to. And you also need to be observant. If you notice that your child is quieter than normal or doesn't have the same eating habits or sleeping habits, maybe friends are changing, grades are dropping, that's the time when you can say to your child, I notice a change in you. I notice that you've been sad lately. Is this true? Can you tell me what's going on? And at that time, it's okay to be direct and to listen to what they have to say. And at that time, if you are concerned and you want to get some extra help, you can either call the school and talk to the child's school counselor, you can talk to a doctor, it might be a medication issue, or you can go directly to a counselor. Conversation starters. If you ask your child direct questions and they're one-word answers, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get one-word answers. And if your child thinks you're digging for information, they're not going to give you that information. So you want to have conversations that your child might answer in more than one word. What was your best class today? Well, his best class might be math because there was a sub. Well, oh my gosh, there was a sub today. Well, what happened in class when there was a sub? And that just leads to more conversation. And you want to be able to have that conversation with your kids. When kids are younger, they always bring their papers home, and sometimes in their folders there's a take home and then there's a take back to school, and you look at the papers and take them out. We don't do that so much for teenagers, nor do we talk about their homework, and that's something that really is important to do. The teenagers don't have as many papers. Everything seems to be on Google Classroom or done electronically. You can have them show them Google Classroom for math class or Google Classroom for English, or let them show you the essay that they just finished. Showing interest in your child is what's important to them. Also, you might want to ask them about whatever they're interested in, their favorite movies, maybe they're into gaming, their songs, what's their favorite, their newest app that they look at. Show interest in what they do. Best part of your day, for a lot of kids, it's at the end of the day when school is over. And why is it the best part of the day? What are you doing that's so much fun? And during lunch is when kids really get to kind of decompress. There's nothing academic going on. A lot of kids are on their phone. They get to see their friends. That's another time to have a conversation, have it get started. And best places to talk to kids. By far, for me, the best place was in the car because when you ask your child a question, they had nowhere to go. And if it was something that maybe might be a little bit uncomfortable, they don't have to look at you and answer. They can look forward, they can look out the window. And if they ask you something uncomfortable, you can do the same thing. You're looking forward, you're watching the road, so you don't have to have that embarrassing change. If you give your kids responsibilities that involve you too, like helping with dinner or dinner cleanup, that's a good time to talk. During dinner, like I said before. In your child's room, for a lot of kids, their room is a safe place. And they go there to retreat, they go there to decompress. If you ask permission to come in your child's room, if that's something you do, it's a good time to sit down and have some of those conversations that, you want to know about. Tell me about what happened in math class today. I heard you had a test in English. How do you think you did? What was the best part of your day? If you go for a walk, we all need exercise. That's a good time to talk while you're out shopping. And another one of my good ones is when you're feeding a group of kids. When you have kids over your house and they're sitting at the table eating snacks or pizza or whatever it is they're eating, they're going to have a lot of conversation. And if you're working there in the kitchen while they're eating, sometimes they will include you in that conversation, but you have to remember just to give interesting comments like, well, that was really interesting, or how did you feel about that, or do you think that was a good idea? Nothing that is judgmental. We have to remember to not be judgmental and not give advice unless they really ask for it. That's also very important. The best piece of advice I ever got when my oldest came into the teen years was don't take your child's moods or comments personally. So much is going through their minds. You are their safe space. They know that they can scream and yell and they can slam doors and that you will still love them and you'll still care for them. So they can really kind of decompress at home. And they don't always mean what they say. They might at the moment, but in the long run, you are their safety spot. So don't ever take it personally. They will grow out of it. Now, Mr. Fritz is going to talk more about creating those relationships.
So, in terms of what I do class-wise when I talk to my kids and how I get kids to connect with me every day is the best lesson or the best advice I think I ever got with teaching, with education, and anything of that nature is that the kids need to know that you care before they care about what you know. Teaching health class, the kids, they don't care about anything that has to do with health until they realize that I'm not only a teacher, but I'm somebody that they can confide in, somebody they can talk to, somebody they can relate to. So finding ways to do that, and it's something as simple as for myself as I take the first 10 minutes every day of my class period, and I figure out something that we're going to talk about that has nothing to do with anything we're going to do today. Let's just take 10 minutes as soon as you come in, kind of decompress. Maybe you had a rough math test, maybe you had a rough day with your friends. Take 10 minutes and let's talk about it. Okay, whatever went on, now's the time to do it, now's the time to talk about it, to where they can come into my classroom and feel comfortable and feel safe. Giving kids that safe environment is something that's incredibly important, and it's, the funniest way that I actually do this is we ask kids what they had for dinner the night before. And it's something that didn't necessarily start that way, but it more so kind of just evolved into it. So we talk about dinner the very first day of class, talk about nothing health related, okay? Sorry, Mrs. Sarah. Talk about nothing health related, okay? We spend 50 minutes talking about just dinner, okay? I'll ask every single kid one by one, all the way down the row, what did they have? Then they'll tell me, well, I had a burger. Mr. Fritz stopped talking to me. So, okay, so we move on, and now when I start talking about that burger, I say, well, what did you put on? Okay, what did you have with it? And then we start getting a little bit more deeper and deeper in discussion as time goes on, and eventually it takes, kid A over here and kid B on this side start having a conversation about a hamburger. All of a sudden, it's like, holy cow, we still have, 15 other kids to talk about with dinner. So it moves on, one after the other about this same silly conversation that has to do with dinner. And then all of a sudden, it's, that next kid can't wait to talk. And then the next kid can't wait to talk. And then it goes all the way through our whole entire classroom. And these kids look and they're like, holy cow, the class period's over. Well, yeah, it is, because you see what happens when, everybody's comfortable with one another. We find common ground to talk about. Something that has nothing to do with what's going on in the classroom, more so something that everybody can relate to. And for me, it just happened to be food. So, it's just the way I am. With our kids, when we talk about it, it started as a way to say, hey, if we have a plain boring discussion, or if I'm lecturing something and nobody wants to discuss, look at kind of how boring a class period can go by. But if everybody adds in a little bit and a little bit of conversation throughout the whole entire class period, now this conversation really turns into something else. And these kids can find a way to talk. And then all of a sudden that talking about dinner turns into, well, what did they do the night before? So it's that natural progression. And that's, what did you do for your weekend? And then how was your week going? And then sometimes some kid will start talking about, what happened to them during the week they necessarily didn't like. And then it kind of turns into a natural conversation about that. But all of that's not possible unless the kids don't know, or the kids know that I care about them as kids. And not just student to teacher. That I'll show you a little bit of who I really am so they can get comfortable with me. And they'll realize that, yes, I'm a teacher, yes, you're a student, but also we're both people. And We're both humans, and I'm gonna treat you like one, you're gonna treat me like one. So developing that mutual respect with the student and with the teacher, whereas it would be a parent and a kid. Now, I don't have kids, so I can't necessarily relate on that aspect of it, but learning how to develop that relationship from student to teacher is always being, let them see a little bit of yourself, okay? If I don't show them that, then they're never gonna show me who they really are. If I don't develop that relationship with a kid, then they're not gonna develop it with me. And then I'm gonna sit here and try to ask these hard questions and tough conversations, and we have some good ones in health class, and the interesting conversations we have to have. And it's just gonna be that awkward phase. And it's the same thing I'd imagine as a discussion at home, where you wanna have that tough conversation with your kid, and they don't really wanna talk about it. Well, find a way to make them feel comfortable first. You know, before you get to that hard conversation, take some time to talk about something completely different that can get their mind off of it. And find a way to allow them to decompress and have opportunity to just talk freely. And like you guys have all said, just listen. Okay, when my kids talk, I just listen. And if we get to a point where we're in such good discussion in our class period, sometimes we take a little bit into our instruction time just for the fact that the kids need to know that I care about what they have to say. Not always that you're going to come in, you're going to sit down, and you're only going to listen to me. No, you're going to come in, you're going to sit down, you're going to talk, and I'm going to listen to you. And I think in terms of a healthy relationship with kids, a healthy relationship with people, I find that to be very important. Take that time to listen, and take that time, even if it runs into your time that you have set planned, be able to adapt and overcome. They're the kids, they're the ones that are trying to figure 100 different things out at one time, whereas we're the adults, you know, we kind of have plans in our head. So we have to be the ones that are able to adapt to that, because the kids have a little bit more of a struggle to do so. So I think finding that common ground with kids, find a conversation that's something that has nothing to do with anything going on right now, okay? And again, for us, it just happened to be dinner. Okay, allow these kids to know that you care before you try to lecture them or give them any kind of conversation about anything else. And then on top of that, just listen and be willing to adapt to what they have to do. Because they're the ones that have to deal with school, social life, grades, sports, anything else that has to go on. Yes, as adults, obviously, we have all those things to do, but we're also completely developmental. And these kids are still working through that, and they're figuring it out, and also trying to find out who they are as people. And giving kids the opportunity to just talk and for us to listen, I think is incredibly important. So for that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Walker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fritz. I like what you said too about the more we have engaged in the conversations about the light stuff, the easy stuff, the mindless stuff, then it makes it a trusting relationship and a trusting situation to have the harder conversations, because those will inevitably come up at some point. So, Ms. Laushin referenced this, but I put, and this presentation will be available on our website in the coming days, so you will have access to these. But these are live links to each of the school counselors at Nord, AJH, and Steele. If you have questions or if you're running into difficulty with anything going on at home and just wanting some advice or some input on how things are going at school, I encourage you to reach out to your child's school counselor. I want to thank Comets Live for being here to record and do the live stream for our event. I want to thank all of our presenters. And I want to encourage all of you to either scan the little dinosaur QR code, he's adorable, or there's a click here, because we welcome your feedback and we want to know what kind of topics and what kinds of things we can do to bring information to you. So thank you all very much. We've got some upcoming events, and have a great day. Go Comets!